Hello everyone, welcome to the Sure Short Topics discussion series of your RBWM paper for the May 2025 exam cycle. In this series, we are discussing the most important topics that will definitely increase your score in the upcoming exam. So today we are talking about managing the non-performing assets, various types of defaults in retail banks, and the provisioning requirements. All of these topics in the series are very important. Do not miss any of these videos. So let us start with our topic. So when we are discussing about repayment in retail loans, non-performing assets or the bad loans, they create hindrance in the bank's functions of giving out loans. So this hindrance is known as default. What is default? Let us first start by discussing what is default. Default is the occurrence of an event which happens due to non-payment of agreed installments. When the borrower does not make the timely repayments, for example, when they are siphoning off the loans, they are diverging the loans, they are willfully not paying the installments, these are known as defaults. And there are some fundamental requirements for a good relationship between the bank and the borrower, like the credit should be used for the intended purpose for which the loan has been availed. It should not be diverted for any other purpose which can be detrimental to the health of the bank. Then the payment of interest and installment or the principal should be as per the agreed terms. The EMIs which are decided, or the types of monthly installment or the fixed installment. Accordingly, the repayments should be done. The borrower gives all such information about security, hypothecation, and the conduct of business from time to time. And neither the bank nor the borrower takes steps that could jeopardize the relationship, right? So if the repayment schedule is not adhered as per to the commitments made, then it translates into a default. And the severity of a default varies according to the period of default, from a simple overdue to the stage of non-performing assets. All right. So when there is a non-repayment, or let's say there is the default due to a genuine reason. So the borrower can default because of a genuine reason or a willful reason. Genuine reason could be for the increase in interest rate, or let's say the borrower is facing some financial disturbance, incapacity in their personal life because of which they're unable to repay. So what we can do, we can reschedule the loan. Reschedule the loan for the genuine defaulters. What we can do, we can allow them to pay higher EMI so that the repayment period is kept at the same level, or we can allow them to pay reduced EMI and elongate the repayment schedule. So this is how we can reschedule the repayment period, right? And it depends upon the customers. Some customers may be willing to pay higher EMI and keep the repayment period at the same level, but most of the customers may not afford to pay the increased EMI. This will result in the loans becoming overdue. So rescheduling is done for the genuine defaulters, where the customer failed to repay due to any personal setbacks, job losses, any unforeseen medical expenses, right? And in this situation, the approach of the banks for recovery will be one of care and concern. It will be a customer oriented approach, because many times the setbacks are of temporary nature. And if we give them more time, the customer can tide over the problem and continue with the repayment. However, another case is a willful default. Default in the payment obligations to the lender, even when the borrower has the capacity to honor the obligations, or the borrower has diverted the funds for some other purpose not in the terms of sanction. That is, they have the capacity to repay, but they are deliberately failing to pay the EMIs. And the attitude of the borrower is also negative. The intentions of the borrowers are malified, and there is no attempt from the borrower's side to service the loans as per the committed repayments. So, what will the banks do here? Banks will take steps like they will give no additional facilities to the listed willful defaulters. In addition, such companies where the banks have identified the siphoning or diversion of funds. What is the meaning of siphoning and diversion of funds? This is also an important topic. Diversion means, for example, utilizing the short term working capital for long term purposes or deploying the borrowed funds for the activities other than those for which the loan was sanctioned, transferring the borrowed funds to subsidiaries or the group companies. All of these. Siphoning will be if the funds borrowed from the banks are utilized for the purposes which are unrelated to the operations and to the detriment of the financial health of the entity or of the lender. Right? So, simply the banks will take these steps, even legal process wherever warranted should be taken against the borrower. Lenders can also initiate criminal proceedings against the willful defaulters, right? So, these steps are taken. These are the penal measures against willful defaulters. Now, how do the banks they monitor the loan accounts? The recovery process should be gentle in case of the genuine defaulters, but professional in case of the willful defaulters. How the recovery process is adopted? How do we see the special mention accounts or the irregularities in loan accounts? So, in line with the international practices and as per the recommendations made by the Committee on the Financial System, under the chairmanship of Sri M. Narasimham, the Reserve Bank of India has introduced the prudential norms for income recognition, asset classification, and provisioning requirements. So, this committee, under the chairmanship of Narasimham, is very important. Accordingly, we have three special mention accounts. To have more control over the monitoring of accounts, the loan accounts are grouped as 3 SMA. SMA 0 is where the principal or interest or any other amount wholly or partly is overdue. If the amount is overdue for 1 to 30 days, so it is SMA 0. Then, if the overdue exists between 31 to 60 days, it comes under the SMA 1 account. And if the overdue is between 61 to 90 days, then it comes under the special mention account category 2. So here in the exam, institute can directly ask us for how many days an account has to remain overdue to be classified as a SMA 1 category account. All right. So this is the special mention accounts. Then if we are talking about the irregular loan account, so income recognition. The policy of income recognition should be objective and based on the record of recovery. And how can we classify a non performing asset in a loan or an advance? So there are time periods regarding that. The interest or the installment of the principal remain overdue for a period of more than 90 days. Before 90 days, we are putting them in the special mention account. Beyond 90 days, then we are classifying the assets as the non-performing assets, right? So, how do we classify the assets? We classify them as substandard asset, doubtful asset, and loss asset. A substandard asset, that is, now we are entering or we are moving from the SMA account to the NPA, non-performing, beyond 90 days. So if a asset has remained non-performing for a period less than or equal to 12 months, then it will be known as a substandard asset. It will have well-defined credit weakness that will jeopardize the liquidation of the debt, and it will sustain some loss if the deficiencies are not corrected. So, between 90 days to 12 months. This is the substandard asset. Then beyond 12 months, it enters into the doubtful asset category if it has remained NPA for more than 12 months. And we have three categories in the doubtful asset. Doubtful category 1 is where the asset has remained in the doubtful category up to 12 months. So 12 months plus 12 months. Doubtful category 2, more than 12 months and up to 3 years. And doubtful category 3 is more than 3 years. Again, you need to remember these time periods. Directly question can be asked, or you will be given a statement. If an asset has remained NPA for more than 12 months, in which category will it fall? For classification, it will fall in the doubtful asset. If it has remained in the doubtful category for more than 12 months but less than 3 years, so doubtful 2 category. This is how the institute will frame questions from this particular topic. And then, if an asset is in the doubtful category for more than 3 years, it will then enter into the loss asset. Loss asset is considered uncollectible and of such little value that its continuance as a bankable asset is not warranted. So, what the banks have suggested, to write off the loss asset, right? To write off the loss asset. So these are the categories. First, we have the special mention account where we are seeing some overdue. Then we have the NPA, non-performing assets. Then we have the substandard, doubtful, and finally the loss assets. Now, another very important point, the classification of assets is to be done borrower wise and not facility wise. The borrower might have taken many loans. So, borrower wise, we will be doing the classification. All right. So, we will do the classification in this manner. For example, let's say a term loan was disbursed on 12th of February 2012. On 12th of Feb in 2012, and the first due date was 15th of June 2012. This was the first due date. But the borrower did not pay. So, how will we move from one stage to another? It will be classified as a standard asset till from 12th of February to 15th of June. It will be considered in the irregular asset when we will see the 90 days time period. So, from 16th of June to 13th of September 13th of September, it will remain in the irregular category. Then beyond that 12-month time period. 12-month time period, it will enter into the substandard category. So from 14th of September 2012, 14th of September 2012 to 13th of September 2013. This will be the substandard category. And then we will step into the doubtful category 1, 2, and 3. Doubtful category 1, 2, and 3. All right. So this is how we move from one stage to another. Right. Now, what is the meaning of erosion of security? Erosion in the value of security can be reckoned as significant when the realizable value of the security is less than 50% of the value assessed by the bank. The value of the security which was assessed by the bank by the insights of the valuer, and it has now gone down beyond 50%. So such NPAs may be straight away classified under the doubtful category. So the question can be framed like when the erosion of the value is less than 50%, or we'll say when the realizable value of the security is less than 50%. How are we going to qualify or categorize the asset? We will straight away classify it under the doubtful category. And if the realizable value is less than 10% of the outstanding, then the existence of the security should be ignored and straight away we will classify it as loss asset. So remaining less than 50% doubtful category and remaining less than 10% loss asset. So the erosion in the value of security should also be monitored, especially when we are giving loans for a longer term. So this is how we are going to classify. This is how we move on from one stage to another. So if the loan was disbursed on 12th of February 2012 and the first due date was 15th June, so this time period is the standard time period. Then it becomes irregular when the payment is not done from July, August, September. 3 months time period, that is 90 days. So it remains in the irregular category till 13th of September 2012. Beyond that, it will enter into the substandard asset if it still remains in the irregular category for 1 year. So from 14th of September 2012 to 13th of September 2013. So 12 months period. Beyond that, doubtful category 1, another 12 months. So till 13th September 2014. Doubtful category 2 till 13th of September 2016. And doubtful category 3 is more than 3 years. More than 3 years, which will make it a loss asset. Which will make it a loss asset. So this is how the account will move from one stage to another stage. And this is very important. I hope everything is clear how we classify the assets, how we monitor the assets. All right. Then now we move on to the provisioning norms. Provisioning basically means keeping safe. When we provision, we try to keep some money aside for some emergencies or exigencies. Similarly, banks are also given the guidelines that they have to follow the prudential norms. That is, provisions should be made on the non performing assets on the basis of classification of assets. When we classify the assets in the doubtful category, substandard category, there are different provisioning requirements. The percentage that has to be kept in the books of the bank in relation to those non-performing assets, right? So how do we decide the provisioning requirement? On the basis of when the account becomes a doubtful, its recognition, the realization of the security, erosion of the value of the security. So the bank should make accordingly provision against the substandard asset, doubtful asset, and loss asset. Simply, the loss assets should be written off. The first point is whenever there's a loss asset, we should write it off from the books of the bank. Or if we are still keeping the loss assets in the books for any reason, then 100% of the outstanding should be provided for. In case of doubtful asset, if the asset is not covered by realizable value of the security, then 100% of the extent should be provided for. So 100% of the extent to which the advance is not covered by the realizable value of the security to which the bank has a valid recourse and the realizable value is estimated on a realistic basis is to be provided for. And in regard to the secured position or the portion of the advance, the rates can range from 25% to 30%. So we are here talking about the doubtful category. So if the advance has remained in the doubtful category up to 1 year, then 25% provision is required. If it is remaining in the doubtful category for 1 to 3 years, then 40%. And beyond 3 years, it turns into a loss asset. And we can say 100% provisioning is required. And this is different from the realizable value. The realizable value of the security. Because the advance which is not covered by the realizable value, automatically we will provide 100% for that. Apart from this, the doubtful category depending upon the time for which it remains. We will provide the provisioning. Apart from this, not only the loss asset and the doubtful asset, but the standard assets also attract provision. Banks should make general provision for the standard assets. At what rates? For farm credit given to agricultural activities and the small and micro enterprises sector, 0.5% provisioning should be done. Again, this is very important. Direct questions will be asked. What is the provisioning requirement for the advances to the commercial real estate sector? 1%. Provisioning for the advances to the commercial real estate sector, residential housing sector, 0.75%. Housing loans which are sanctioned on or after 7th June 2017, 0.25% provision, and all other loans do advances not included attract 0.40% of provisioning. So these are the provisioning requirements for the loss asset, doubtful asset, and standard assets. This is how we monitor the NPA. Now, we have already discussed in the previous session the recovery policy of banks. The bank's debt collection policy should be with dignity and respect to the customers. The policies should not be unduly coercive. Policies built on courtesy. General guidelines like the customer would be contacted ordinarily at the place of her or his own choice. Identity of the authority who is going to represent the bank for the follow up and recovery should be known to the borrowers. Bank should respect the privacy of the borrowers, and such guidelines like inappropriate occasions in the family should be avoided. Also, giving notice to the borrowers is important, right? So, these are the general guidelines. Customer would be contacted ordinarily at the place of her or his choice. Identity and authority of the persons authorized should be made known to the borrowers. We should respect the privacy of the borrowers. Then, if we are employing any direct recovery agent, that is, any agencies which are engaged by the bank and the agents or the employees of the concerned agencies. These are the agents which the banks employ to get the recovery done. Regarding the employment of agents, there are certain guidelines, RBI guidelines. So, RBI has been issuing guidelines to all the scheduled commercial banks on the recovery agents which are engaged by them. In view of the rise in the number of disputes and litigations against the banks for engaging recovery agents, it is felt the adverse publicity would result in serious reputational risk. So, RBI felt that there's a need to review the policy, and thus RBI has issued draft guidelines which are placed on their website, and the banks have to follow them. Banks should have a due diligence process in place for the engagement of the recovery agents, and the individuals involved should strictly follow the guidelines issued by RBI. Banks should ensure that the agents that are engaged by them, they carry out verification of their employees, like the policy verification. Banks may also decide the periodicity at which re-verification should be done. Due notice and appropriate authorization should be given, right? Notice should be sent to the borrower regarding the recovery process. Now, when we are talking about the direct recovery agent, so the recovery agent should be properly trained. They should have 50 hours in case of graduates and 100 hours training in case of non-graduates. Apart from the training, they should also have passed the DRA examination, the Direct Recovery Agents examination, which is conducted by the IIBF. And the minimum prescribed passing marks is 50%. Only after fulfilling these two criteria, they can be employed as the DRAs. Then the terms and conditions should contain, like the notice period before taking possession, the circumstances under which the notice period can be waived, the procedure for taking possession of the security, a provision regarding the final chance to be given to the borrower for the repayment of the loan before the sale or auction, the procedure for giving repossession, and for the sale and auction of the property. All of these things we have already discussed in the previous session when we were studying the Surface Act, right? Also, regarding the incentives which are given to the recovery agents, banks should set very stiff targets, or if they offer very high incentives to the recovery agents, this will turn into reputational risk for the banks. So, banks are advised to ensure that the contracts with the recovery agents do not induce adoption of uncivilized, unlawful, and questionable behavior for the recovery process. And that is all. When the banks, if they receive any complaints against the recovery agents, because banks are responsible for the actions of the agents, so they should ensure that the agents they strictly follow or adhere to the guidelines and instructions, also including the BCSBI code that we have discussed earlier. So that is all for today. This is, again, I will repeat, a very important topic, and you should study it very diligently. If you face any problems, any queries, you can put them down in the comment section. So if you found this video helpful, make sure that you like it, you share it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, the JIB CIB English Medium channel, because this series and the other important series that are very important, you will get everything on the YouTube channel. So that you do not miss any updates, please subscribe to the channel. I will see you again in the next video with more such important informations and topics. Till then, thank you and all the best.